There's so many different horror games that we all remember and love today. But have you ever wondered what they actually look like at the exact moment they were released, or even way before that? I started thinking about this, dug deep into the internet, and managed to track down the absolute earliest builds of your favorite horror titles. And let me tell you, it was a massive headache to find them. Today, we are breaking down That's Not My Neighbor, Poppy Playtime, Hello Neighbor, and even Dead by Daylight. Seeing how they used to look is absolutely mind-blowing, so do not even think about clicking away. Let's start with That's Not My Neighbor. This game came out recently and instantly got an overwhelming amount of hype, breaking the internet with tons of fan art and viral memes. But did you actually know what its very first version looked like? If you think it was just the standard demo, you are completely wrong. If you dig into the deepest corners of the web, you can find an early version with a unique image where the pale doppelganger looked totally different and there was zero iconic green filter. I couldn't find a playable build of this anywhere, so I literally messaged the game's developer, Nikita Vetriuk, directly. He told me, "We just put together a fake screenshot to show the programmers how the game should look." So I threw that non-existent version out. The actual first playable build was discovered inside the first volume of the Horror Stories anthology, released on August 7th, 2024. For those who don't know, this anthology is a collection of games from different developers tied to one single theme, and that theme was stalking, which obviously points straight to our pale doppelganger friend. This alpha version lasted only about 2 hours, unlike the full game, which takes a solid 7 or 8 hours to beat. Back then, it had way fewer endings, only 3, and the total character count was strictly limited to 15. You can see them on the screen right now, and yep, there was no Kaifarik and no cat, which is honestly tragic. The moment you step into the game, you immediately notice a massive difference in the controls. It feels incredibly janky and rough compared to the smooth movement we have now. There was absolutely none of the familiar decor. No desk, no painting of a woman, and no calendar. You couldn't even click on items around the room to discover lore details about the protagonist's life like you can in the final game. The animations were completely different too. On the TV, the characters weren't animated at all and had zero VHS effects. You could actually see the emergency number on the screen back then, but the function to actually call them wasn't even coded into the game yet. Like, how am I supposed to call them if there is literally no phone anywhere? Even the door sound was totally altered. It used to be way more high-pitched. Listen to this. The plot back then was shortened to just 5 days, with totally different endings. When your neighbor comes over to spend the night, he just casually sits in the living room, and the beer he tells you to grab vanishes instantly with zero animations for opening the fridge or drinking. Later, when the neighbor leaves, his house still catches fire just like you remember, but there is a catch. In the first version, it burns completely to ashes, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Like, there are no ruins at all. The house is just physically gone. Now look at the tall man who shows up on the first night. We see his entire face right from the start, which totally kills the mystery and suspense. But at least in this version, you can always see his raw emotions. Remember that night where you can see a hanged man outside the window on a pole, looking like a welcome sign? In the final game, he hangs himself out of grief, but in the alpha, it's the exact opposite. His sign literally says, "We are not glad to see guests," and the cause of death is different. The townspeople hanged him because they thought he was a monster. I also noticed that when the pale man with the military head stands outside, he is usually far away. But in the first build, he stands right in front of the window holding someone's head. The same giant scaling applies to other characters when they enter the room. They looked way bigger for some reason. But what shocked me the most were the doppelganger checks. Instead of checking the aura scan, you had to detect them based on how blurry the photo was. If the photo is blurry, it's a guest. If you're wondering if the main pale man changed since then, I hate to disappoint you, but he's mostly the same. However, his jump scare ending had no animation at all. It was just presented as a wall of text explaining that you vanished and everyone avoids the abandoned house now. In the second ending, after surviving all the days, the protagonist barricades the doors and windows, but we don't go to the basement because it didn't exist yet. We just stay in the room. And in the third ending, your own guests kick you out into the apocalypse to die. Now, let's jump into Hello Neighbor. This game has a ridiculous amount of alpha builds where they changed everything from scratch. But if you don't know this game, you must be living in a cave with monkeys. I found the ultimate first version, leaked by the developer Nikita Kolesnikov on September 5th, 2024. Originally, it was just a file with a Blender concept animation of the first neighbor, but talented modders turned it into a playable prototype. Its first ever mention was on July 2nd, 2015, which was literally 11 years ago. This build is called Hello Neighbor Death Gum, and it's an incredibly raw tech demo with no textures and broken animations. You spawn in a tiny room holding binoculars to spy on the neighbor. The neighbor lives in a tiny, ordinary house with zero textures. Nothing like the massive fortress with a roller coaster, a prison, and a bar from the final game. And now, get ready, because this is how his pursuit looks in the full game, and this is how he looks right here. Look at his janky, glitchy movement. And why is he completely red? Get away from me, can you just leave? I don't think you can even beat this build, it feels completely impossible. Oh wait, I actually won! In this version, the neighbor was supposed to throw boxes at you, and you could turn on the TV with a remote, though you couldn't actually watch anything. The plot was simple. Sneak into his house, steal a random red cube to uncover his evil plans, and run back without getting caught. That's literally it. But before we move on, check out his first ever jump scare! Next up is Dead by Daylight. Today, it's a polished game with crazy crossovers like Five Nights at Freddy's, The Witcher, and The Walking Dead. But more than 10 years ago, on June 18th, 2015, the very first build was just restored. When you launch it, there is no menu, no settings, and no character select, just the logo over a campfire. There was only one killer, the Trapper, and only one map, the log mill. The map was so unfinished that huge sections had absolutely no textures, just giant blue and green voids. The cupboards clipped through walls, and the basement was completely empty except for the hooks. Speaking of hooks, they worked totally differently. If you got caught, there was no skill check timing mechanic. You just smashed the spacebar to escape. And being hooked multiple times didn't make it worse. You could just keep escaping, unlike today where 3 hooks mean instant death. The Trapper had 0 abilities, and his only way to kill was to hit a survivor twice and trigger an instant Mori. Also, for some weird reason, the survivor's blood was bright blue. The animations were hilarious. Look at how the Trapper pulls a survivor out of the closet. And look at this broken running animation when you get injured. If you threw down a pallet, the killer couldn't even break it because that mechanic didn't exist. To fix generators, they were massive in height, and you just held down one button for a long time. No random skill checks at all. Finally, let's look at Poppy Playtime, a horror game that needs no introduction. Back in 2023, the devs leaked early footage of what Chapter 1 looked like before release. In this early build, the protagonist actually drives a car up to the Playtime company factory and stands at the entrance. You could actually walk around the parking lot, unlike the final game where you spawn directly inside. They cut this because walking took way too long, so they turned that scene into the main menu background instead. But the funniest part? Huggy Wuggy's original jump scare. Look at him. He attacks you like he's playing on 500 pain. It looks so goofy compared to the terrifying monster we got later. And look at the early concept of the final room where you meet Poppy. The contrast is night and day. That's all the secrets I dug up for you today. Let me know in the comments which game's first version you want to see next. Smash that like button, subscribe to Grimm, and I'll see ya.